So, welcome everyone to the Soul Remembering podcast. It's a great pleasure to have Rounik with us today. And here we give people an opportunity to share their spiritual journey, what's alive for them at the moment in their practice, and really inspire with what they've learned. And I know there'll be a fair number of people watching this podcast that are interested in sound, or you might even be a sound healer or a sound therapist. So we're going to go into some topics today that I hope and really, have a feeling that you'll find kind of inspirational and you really get something from. So, Ronin, just as a way in your work as a sound healer, is there anything that's particularly alive for you at the moment in the way that you're relating to your work, or just something that's sparking off your joy, your imagination in terms of your work at the moment?
Hi, Tom. Thanks. Yes, I guess it changes. It changes all the time. At the moment, so I do facilitate larger sound baths, some small intimate ones, and I do one-to-one sessions. And I do find that through the weeks of the year, I find drawn more particularly to doing one or the other, even though I've got these scheduled. At the moment, I'm really enjoying my one-to-one sessions, especially using tuning forks. So I'm a biofield tuning practitioner, which is a modality created by Eileen McCusick in the States, and using specific tuning forks, specific frequencies to interact with our electromagnetic field. So yeah, I'm loving that. I'm loving the space that people can find, the expansion, the release through that in a very gentle way. So it's really helpful for the nervous system, and I find that I also get a lot of benefit from that in
Mm.
giving these treatments.
That sounds wonderful. I'd love to. We'll kind of explore that a little bit as we go on. But I'm really curious to know, Ronik, what was your way into sound healing? Was it a natural sort of development from what you were doing before, or was it a big sort of shift in your life, or how did you kind of get into this world?
I mean, there's different times. I remember doing my Reiki 1 and 2 training in 2003, and at the end of the training, or 2002, 2003, at the end of the training, the Reiki master took me and the other student into another room, which we hadn't been in before. It's like, oh, a secret room. And in the room, it was empty. It just had a crystal singing bowl in the center. And we were already kind of like vibrating a lot from that, but from the Reiki. But he played the bowl, and it was like, okay, just blew things wide open, and my heart was just buzzing for hours, days afterwards.
Wow.
I thought that I would then get a crystal bowl. Actually, I only got the first one like recently, like this year, which is interesting. Although I think I borrowed one of yours a couple of years ago,
Yeah,
interestingly enough.
yeah, actually, yeah. Um,
But basically, yeah. So from that point, I didn't go deep into sound. I remember doing a tuning fork course, which is no longer around, in maybe 2005, 2006. And then I was really interested in reading up and exploring Jonathan Goldman. I got a singing bowl, but I wasn't doing it as a profession. It was really for my own healing. I've
mm,
had a chronic condition since I was 18, so I was finding ways to kind of bring more relaxation to the solar plexus area, especially, and yeah, to kind of to help me and my body find more balance, and just to deal with a lot of pain that I had constantly every few days or so, or discomfort.
mm.
So sound was a really massive part of it, and long story short, um, got into another part of music and sound. Was running a magazine for producers and synthesists and DJs and all that kind of stuff for a while, which was wonderful. Very stressful, but very wonderful. Um, and then my partner passed 5.5 years ago, and literally probably about 5 or 6 months after that, it was just suddenly all the signs were kind of introducing me to bowls, to gongs, and to training, because COVID also happened at the same time, pretty
Mm.
much, a few months later. So I just knew, I just went with what was there, and went with the training, and realized that this is what I wanted to do. So a year later, I lost my job, which was like just so synchronous, because it's like I'm doing this now, and it's just the transitions allowing for that movement. And since then, I've not looked back. I done additional training with gongs and with flumies especially, and we can talk about that more later, what
Mm.
these are. But also with biofield tuning, so tuning forks, which are the mainstay of what I do in a one-to-one session.
You don't happen to have a tuning fork to hand, do you? Just so we can show people.
Funny you should ask that. I will have to move out of shot. You can edit this bit out.
No, it's quite nice. I can just kind of sit here and we can just sit and
You're
wait
saying,
for sound. I'd quite like to see if we could. Are you able just to do the little bing?
yeah, of course. Ding. Was that good? I
I'm not
mean,
sure. No.
the voice is the most powerful sound healing.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Can't
That's
ignore
Jonathan Gomm says that. Yeah,
that. So I've got a range of different forks, but I've picked a few different ones. So I've got a 417 hertz. I've picked that one because it's quite high pitch.
yeah.
So
Mm.
I'm not using professional mics for this, but hopefully people who are watching and listening will be able to hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me just see if I've got. Um, see if I can just turn on the. Okay, we'll try it like this and see what happens.
Mm.
And so for even those who are, not sound healers, whatever that term means, or, just encourage you just to breathe. Just
Mm.
really just see what you feel, if any emotions come up, or where you might feel this in the body. Um, we have more tuning forks. More. So these are different. You can see the bobbly bits. I don't want to get too
Mm.
technical. They're weights, but I like the word bobbly bits. So these are lower frequencies, and so you won't hear them as well, but you can feel them. So it's
Mm.
really good to kind of place them on the body. The biofield tuning, they actually also provide these little feet that enable it to slide across the
Oh, nice. Yeah,
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 much
yeah,
more.
yeah.
Because you see, otherwise you've got quite
Yeah.
it's not pointed, but it's not comfortable
Mm.
when you're moving it across.
Mm.
And then you've also got a different type of foot, which is, you might be able to see it, it's more like a amplifier.
Oh, wow.
Imagine that. So it does, it's like this one kind of radiates the sound or the vibration
Oh.
deep within. This one is wonderful if you're doing something over the head and the face. It's just like
Mm.
literally like giving somebody a kind of like natural Botox session. I mean, people come up with wrinkles gone and stuff. But I'll try doing this. Maybe even place my hand near the microphone and see if you can get some of the vibration. But the vibrations are very low. This is a solfeggio tone,
Mm.
89 hertz. So most speakers won't necessarily reproduce that, especially on a laptop or a phone. But perhaps you'll be able to get some sound.
No, I can't hear that. I can't hear that at all. Maybe
But
some people could do.
it looks good. You know
It
what?
looks wonderful, and these are wonderful tools to use in sound therapy and sound healing. And I'm curious, Ronik, because you look sort of similar-ish sort of age to me, and it seems like we got interested in these things around the same kind of time. For you, it was the Reiki attunement, the kind of the crystal ball, the feeling of the remembrance of that feeling of the vibration and the expansion of your heart and consciousness, I imagine. And for me, I'm trying to remember. I think for me, the first instrument I got that we could call, well, I mean, of course, I had other instruments before, but the one maybe we use more in sound healing was probably a Native American style flute. I remember having one of them around 2000 and what would it have been 2003, same kind of year as you. It was a special thing for me because I was getting into sort of shamanic spirituality, and I was kind of felt this soul connection to the Native American tradition. So I kind of got my first first Native American flute, and it was beautiful playing it. It's beautiful playing it. And then I think for me, the second one was when I was yeah, when I was I running meditation events, or maybe when I was just when I was practicing more meditation, I got myself like a sort of a singing bowl, and I still have that singing bowl. So that's like I've had that for over like 20 years or something.
Mm.
So it's interesting the kind of threads that kind of weave through our lives in terms of how we connect to these instruments. But I'm also curious, I mean, did you have, I mean, most people see sound healing as a sort of form of, it's, you know, it's usually fairly kind of spiritually minded people that are interested in it or will come along to event. Not necessarily always, but usually they have that sort of openness. But did you have that when you were younger, even you know, before 2003, or was it something that just kind of emerged within you? Did you have that within your family, or was it more like just coming from within your own spirit?
That's a really good question. I feel that there's a lot of different ways that question could go, but so I'm just going to speak, I think, and see what comes through. Yeah, before 2003, me growing up, certainly sound and music was a refuge, a sanctuary for me, and a spiritual place to be in as well. Even if it wasn't necessarily spiritual music as such, but it had an effect on me, and I really noticed that in a visceral way, but also in a very kind of a healing way, as in there was transformation and change, you know. So yeah, definitely sound had that. I was also brought up in a family where, you know, we I went to the Hindu temple. I went. My best friend was the vicar's son from a Church of England. I
Oh,
went to Roman Catholic school with an abbey and monks. I went to the Buddhist temple. My parents then got into Osho Rajneeshji, so it was like, okay,
oh wow.
a lot of different influences, and sound is major in all these different traditions.
Mm,
And then when I started to look at the Sufi tradition as well, and shamanic traditions, and it's like there's just the common thing that links everything is vibration.
mm.
And that's what it comes down to, you know. So how many traditions talk about the beginning of the universe is basically a sound, and it is, because everything is sound, everything is light, it's a vibration. So in a sense, that kind of informed me at that point. And then in my 30s, I went off and did different things, as I said, and came back. Yeah. And I just found it interesting how different instruments called to me. So for many years, it was the guitar.
Mm.
And I literally could not have a day where I didn't pick up my guitar and play and just feel it. It doesn't matter if it was very good or not. And now sometimes I feel
Is
that
that an
quite
electric guitar or acoustic or classical or?
originally just acoustic. I did just acoustic, a beautiful acoustic. Um, and yeah, then there was electric in between, but it was always that acoustic
Oh,
that was
nice.
special, a special connection. Um,
Nice.
and now it's like different instruments like a handpan might be something that I'll reach for, or I'll find myself humming because I've personally been through my own journey of trauma and grief and loss, and I mean you know some of this as well. And I found that it was my voice that allowing my voice to find its expression again
Mm.
really important in helping me to acknowledge some of the trauma and to release it. So, literally, sound healing through feeling the vibrations of tones in my own voice through
Mm.
breath too. And something that you're.
You have a lovely eloquence in how you're communicating this, Ronik. I'm really enjoying listening. And I feel like I just want to bring in what for me, I just found it earlier today with a bit of what we could call bibliomancy, or the kind of just looking and seeing what you find. This is a wonderful text, The Mysticism of Sound and Music by the Sufi teaching of Hazrat Inayat Khan. And I'll just read from the chapter on the mystery of sound. Sound is perceptible activity of the all-pervading life. Different sounds differ in their outer expression, but within it is one and the same activity that directs all sounds. It is in expression that sounds differ. Because of the different instruments through which they are expressed, the deeper we penetrate into the mystery of sound, the more we are able to trace the link that connects all sounds. This link is what the musician calls harmony, and it is in harmony that is hidden the secret of joy and peace. I love that, those words. It really, I mean, already it touches on what we're talking about, this kind of this sensitivity to vibration and the sensitivity to the sort of the pulse of life, and even kind of going deeper than the sounds or deeper than the and just the feeling of the vibration. And I'm kind of called to remember way before my kind of sound healing or sound therapy days, just how much emotional nourishment I got from music and sound. You know, I would always try to have quite beautiful I don't like the word alarm clock. I've been trying to think like song of the heart, sort of calling or something like that. Song of the heart calling in the morning to help us wake up. And it was really, yeah, I think it's like this for many people. The music that they play throughout their life is profoundly connected, you
Mm.
know, to them and their emotional feeling and the different chapters of their life. For me, I used to have Nick Drake's one of Nick Drake's albums. There was this beautiful song, I think, from Pink Moon, one of his last album that I used to play as an alarm clock, and it just really kind of set. Was it that album? Maybe I've got that from. Maybe one of the other albums. I'll come back to what I played. But just the kind of the sense of, yeah, just I think it's important as sound therapists and sound healers that we don't limit our feeling about sound just to say from the instruments that we have, of
Mm.
the gong or the crystal bowls or the tuning forks, that we kind of, yeah, remember just our own relationship to sound and what that means. And one of the things that I've been trying to do recently, because I play other instruments, like I play the lute and things, Renaissance lute and other things. And I just noticed I've just been like not listening to basically kind of any recorded music recently. And I just noticed that when I reduce that input, how much more sensitive to sound I actually become, and actually how much more I enjoy it. Because if I'm just always listening to stuff, I kind of become a bit desensitized to it. I mean, do you relate to that? Do you resonate with that, or kind
That
of?
sounds fascinating. So what happens when you do listen to pre-recorded music now?
Well, I mean, it's not that I would never do it, but it's just that I kind of like I notice that I don't hear it as fully, and I notice that it doesn't um it doesn't touch my heart so much because it's almost too familiar. Because when I say play, so when I learn like a lute piece, if I've only got like some professional, if I'm just constantly listening to professional players play a certain piece of music, I have their version in my mind more when I'm playing it, and I don't hear so much even my own playing as sensitively, or even just the sense that when I play a piece of music, it can just be my own kind of creation, as it were. And actually, one of my teachers on the lute, he actually encourages people when he says, when you're learning a piece of music, don't go onto YouTube and just see how I play or someone else.
Mm.
Like, kind of discover it for yourself in some way, and then it will feel you have a more intimate kind of connection with it. But then maybe it's just also to do with partly the way my kind of mind works. But I think in general, for us in this kind of 21st century, if we reduce our input a little bit, then our mind just becomes, you know, clearer and more sort of receptive to things. Yeah.
Really, yeah, that's really, really interesting. So it reminds me a little. I mean, I found recently that I've perhaps fallen into a space where almost, after doing sessions or doing the larger sound baths, that I'm looking for something to kind of help me come back into the space. It might be match of the day, who knows? Something to almost kind of like normalize the experience, and it kind of goes back to what I didn't really answer your question before about the maybe the kinds of people that might attend sound baths or what is spiritual. It's just it's just whatever you feel, it's whatever you experience, and that's okay. It doesn't have to be we're levitating off the ground at the end of a sound bath in lotus position. It could be that you're thinking of your shopping list the entire sound bath, and that's okay. It's all right to have a busy mind. To let to just notice it is enough. Um,
No, very much, very much. But I would like to sort of, yeah, anything can be kind of everyone's welcome and everything's welcome into that space. But
but
if we kind of, I'd like to sort of begin to angle a little bit more just to finding out more about you, Ronik, and how you kind of function as a sound therapist and a sound healer. I mean, what does your work look like at the moment, and kind of how has it developed over time?
okay, I mean, wow. In what way? Just in terms of my average week or something,
Yeah,
or
the kinds of events you're running,
oh,
how you got these events off the ground. Are you doing stuff one-to-one groups in retreats or other events, or just kind of what is your sort of, because I think you are, and maybe I'm not, maybe I'm mistaken in this, but I think you are kind of doing it professionally, sound therapy, sound healing. It's your kind of it's your thing that you're generating your income from. So I think that would be really interesting for people to hear, like what makes up that kind of mandala, as it were, for you at the moment.
sure, sure. Well, yeah, it's been a process. I've got to say, when I started off doing this professionally, so to speak, or as my main income, I wasn't making ends meet for about a year, or so, and I was finding other ways to supplement my income as doing my editing role and writing things. But over time, after about a year and a half or so, it's. I mean, now I'm like 3.5, 4 years in. Yeah, now this is the main thing. So as I mentioned before, I'm a biofield tuning practitioner, and that really is informing the vast majority of my one-to-one sessions. So using the tuning forks, specific kind of ways of treating. It's not necessarily one tuning fork per chakra at all. In fact, it's not that. It's really working with the biofield. It's a little different to, how I'd normally think of it as sound healing, because a normal sound bath that I would do, which I do, for example, around Bristol and some in London and some in Glastonbury, Wales. And um, those started off really just, I think the first place I went to was Wild Goose Space, just in between or at the end of the pandemic. Um, and I hired the venue out for Friday evenings every couple of weeks, and that stayed with me. And so I might have 15, 20 people coming to that, or maybe less sometimes, and just staying with it. Um, every session is quite beautiful, it's quite different, or quite difficult, or whatever it is, it's what it is. And then I just started to find other venues. So, yeah, there's a place called the Langton in Bristol. I was doing the Clifton Observatory this year, which was one of these amazing things that, somebody just literally called me up and said, would you like to do this here? And I was literally thinking about this place a week ago. Like,
Oh, wow.
how awesome is that? Um, and a few things like that have happened. So I've just followed the vibes.
And most viewers won't know what that is, but it's not. It's a kind of it's a very iconic place in Bristol in the UK. It's a kind of, what would you describe it as? I've never actually been in there, but it's a kind of observatory almost. It's close to a huge suspension bridge, iconic thing in Bristol. And I kind of, you describe it because it's sort of maybe.
Also, the suspension bridge in Bristol is world renowned. I think, or is well known as being across a gorge. It's a beautiful part of Bristol. You're not really close to any traffic or anything. And then there's a little hill that comes up by the side of that, and you've got this beautiful old building that I think it's like 1700s or so. I can't remember. It looks like a small turret almost.
Mm,
It also has a roof space there, so they have little concerts there. The inside area is beautiful. They've got a little cafe at the back now. It's a camera obscura also, so you can basically look at the view around from within a very dark space there. There's also like a little place where you can go into the caves down through a cave
yeah.
staircase into to the edge of the gorge or the cliff,
I
basically. So
mean,
you're
it's interesting because it's not necessarily your typical venue that I mean, as an example, because many people might think it's okay, I'm going to book a yoga studio or I'm going to book a community hall, but this is a little bit of a different kind of venue. So it's interesting to see how, the different venues that sound healing, sound therapy is kind of finding its way into this sort of the wider world. So did they just reach out to you and ask you to come to do an event there, or?
They did.
Oh,
And it was just around the time that a lot of things had happened. But I probably should jump back a little bit further back. So, 2.5 years ago, just before the solstice of, where are we? So 2022, I think it was. I met an incredible sound healer in Bristol called Annette Shaw. She's Bristol Gong Baths on Instagram, and we'd known about each other for a while. We lived like about 5 streets away from each other, and we just couldn't meet for some reason, whatever. And then one day we did, and literally we just started to play gongs. She's an incredible gong player and singer, brings intuitive kind of like light language style singing to things as well as all the things I do. Um, and yeah, so we were just like, let's do something for solstice. I took a bit of a leap of faith and didn't even think about it. I called up, or I think I might have emailed a venue, a beautiful old church in Bristol called the Mount Without. It used to be, I think, St Michael's Church on the Mount or something, whatever it was called. Apparently on the ley line of St Michael's ley line, but I'm not
If
100%.
I have time, I'll edit in an image of this church because it really is a spectacular, spectacular venue to use.
Yeah, I can give you some pictures of me and Annette in there so you can see
Mm,
that, how it looks. It's gorgeous. Yeah, it's incredible. On the ceiling, they've got a beautiful infinity sculpture.
mm,
It's stunning. Um, it was just one of those things, you know. I just thought I'll email them. They were like, yeah, we've not done sound baths here before, so they were just really supportive, and made it accessible. So for me and Annette to do this, and then we've been regulars there every month since that time, and
wow.
it's been amazing. And you know, we can get up, 60 or 70 people that will come to the sound baths there.
Mm,
So of course that's an incredibly useful, stream of revenue for us. Uh,
mm,
and it also, the venue promote it via their website. You know, that they list everything that's happening. So it's
oh,
just
wow.
so whatever is happening, whether it's a dance recital, a concert, a sound bath, then it's on the website. So because it's such a beautiful venue, it doesn't necessarily, it attracts people like for weddings, for parties. The BBC use it for filming and all sorts of stuff. Different people see it than maybe the people that would go to the yoga studios. So for me,
Mm,
it's like what you were saying, really. It's like branching out and seeing that
mm.
actually sound healing is not just for one particular crowd. You know, you don't have to be wearing a white shirt and have long hair. I mean, I do have, but it's nice. But you know, it's for everyone. I didn't mean to look at you distinctly when I said that, but there you go. Anyway, so yeah, so for everybody. Um,
I'm
and
never gonna have long hair, particularly unless I grew like a special like druid kind of like ponytail or something just here. It's not gonna happen for me. But
I can kind of see it. I think you could rock it.
I think so. You
I think
think
so.
so? It
Yeah.
does look pretty good actually when people do it. No, that's really interesting to hear the kind of I mean, what you're touching upon there is partly that when you're working as well for anyone really a yoga teacher or sound healer, like what is the context you're working in and does that venue also promote the events and and how well do they do that? What organization are you working with through your sound healing? And I imagine, Ronik, you're quite good. I imagine you're quite good at kind of networking and things and kind of getting to know people in a natural way and sort of collaborations kind of forming. And I've noticed over the years, though, that that's not a natural skill for everyone in some ways. Sometimes what I notice and notice it within myself in the past is that there's a kind of over eagerness to jump in with the kind of the thoughts of collaboration. And I know if I don't know people and they message me about collaborations, I often don't pay that much attention because I don't know who the heck they are. I don't know anything about them. Um, so there is something about that kind of skillful navigation, getting to know people, that seeing how things flow. But I know that's not a natural thing for everyone to be able to do. So I don't know whether you could just sort of speak a little bit to that in terms of your experience.
I mean, I think everyone's experience will be different just because we're all different people and we'll resonate with different sound healers. And, there's quite a few sound healers in Bristol now.
Mm,
Met quite a lot. And I've met a lot of yoga teachers. And there are some that you just feel like, oh, yeah, there's a spark. It's like when you walk in
yeah.
a room or in a party and you just get that affinity with someone. Literally it is walking into someone's biofield and sharing that information and feeling like, oh, I feel relaxed here. My nervous system relaxes. I feel,
Yeah.
or, it's like if you see someone and you're attracted to them and it's a romantic thing, it's the same thing, really,
Okay.
I think.
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay.
but then sometimes I think there's a shelf life for
Right.
collaborations. So,
Yeah.
I collaborated with a few people, some breathwork facilitators, wonderful people. Nikita, she's in Bristol again, I think, and we used to do a lot together. And at the moment, it's not that time for us. It might be in the future, and that's okay. With Annette, I, I can't see it ending. In fact, we want to do more things together, and that feels great. And then I've got other ideas for like,
Mm.
I've worked with a Pilates teacher who's more in the kind of like, I guess, Bedminster, Brislington area. So
Mm.
very different kind of people that she introduces me to for that, and it's really wonderful to have that movement and that sound. And again,
Mm.
just bringing sound to different people.
Mm.
I think it's just being open. Um, Sometimes it's easy
Yeah.
to force things, and I do that all the time. I'm naturally impatient. That's my standard kind of Aries trait. But when I start to slow down and really feel into what feels right and where it feels
Mm.
right, where am I feeling this collaboration could be good? Is it like an idea of money? Is it coming from my head?
Yeah.
Would it be good?
Yeah.
Coming from the heart, from the solar plexus, like, I can breathe into it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've had
Oh,
that.
I know exactly what you mean. That's a really good piece of insight and guidance. And it's like, where is this feeling for collaboration coming from within me? The motivation and the body? Is it a financial thing? Is it another just being clear what those motivations are in some ways.
Hmm.
Because sometimes, we might think, oh, I want to collaborate, but it's partly because they're just a good friend in some way and you enjoy being with them. But whether or not that makes sense in terms of your business could be another sort of thing. But it doesn't mean it's not to do it, but just be aware where
Yeah.
the motivation and where the energies come for doing the kind of for
And
doing the collaboration.
like one really important point, I think, as well, is like it's when we think about collaborating or even offering a service, we're often putting ourselves in the center of that. I'm the one banging the gong, I'm the one, sounding the tuning forks. But what is that going to look like for the people on the other side who are experiencing it? So, how can we create something where it's not about a hierarchy, but there's a meeting of need and ability or whatever that is? And then,
Yeah, these are all really kind of these are all really interesting things, and I don't mind sharing this because it could be an interesting story, and we'll see where it goes to. I remember doing a sound bath at quite a large event, and I got lots of good feedback from people, and it was at the end of quite a large event. And but one of the main kind of the organizers came up to me at the end, and he was like, "I just need to give you some feedback, Tom. When you were playing the when you were playing the shamanic drum, it was almost had a sort of aggressive, sort of anger, sort of thing a little bit. It felt like too much for the sound bath." And then I kind of, I sort of reflected on it afterwards, and maybe it was true. Maybe at that time I had this a bit more like kind of, I'm gonna project my energy into the space for these kind of people. But then also, I think at the time maybe there were parts of um, how to say it. Maybe there were parts of um, there were parts of me in him that he wasn't comfortable with, and there were parts of me in him that he wasn't comfortable with. But so maybe because we had that slight sort of energetic
mm,
thing going on, that maybe he also had a bit of a sort of maybe an anger thing, but he was kind of seeing it and that in me. But then it's just a kind of interesting. Where am I going to with this? It's an interesting thing in terms of just the point of what is our energetic projection and actually how are other people experiencing it, because when we do sound healing, it's definitely not just this. I mean, even there's a way of saying like there isn't really an objective physical sound that's separate from consciousness in some way. It's within this field that's a mutually experienced thing. So however we are within ourselves, loving or agitated or whatever, that's going to be part of the experience people are going to, receive through our work.
mm. And yeah, I love that. And I think also, what is a successful sound bath, for example? does it mean that there are unicorns and rainbows popping up from people's bottoms at the end of it? You know, it's like, is that necessary?
That's
Or
quite an image, Ronik. I think we
I'm
should get
sorry
people to
for.
stay with that image a bit stronger. Unicorns appearing out of people's bottoms. We need to find an image. We can find an image of that and edit it into the
I, you know, sorry, not sorry. I don't know. Um,
video.
I guess, there's, I mean, I have this too. It's like, has the sound bath been successful? I remember a recent one where a couple of people said that was difficult for them. It was challenging, like your experience.
Yeah.
What was the word? It was like an agitated essence. They were talking about it from a felt sense,
Yeah.
but it was like an agitation. Another person struggled and maybe even found it, tricky to walk home or notice that challenge there. And there's a part of me then that goes into, oh no, I haven't done a good job, or they should be healed in some way, or better, or balanced. And it's like, actually, everyone's really where they need to be. And the most important thing, I think, is that we notice where we are and we acknowledge that and we don't push it into the shadows. So someone's saying, actually, Tom, you should have played differently so I didn't feel angry. It could be reframed to be like, it's interesting because when you played that, I noticed anger in me.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, let's work with that. Let's
Mm.
see where that is. As we said before, where do we fitting it in the body? What does it look like? What does it make you feel? Like literally allowing it to be present, because healing
Yeah.
isn't like linear and it isn't unicorns coming out of our bottoms. Healing, it can be, but it can also just be that discomfort coming to the surface, and we're working with vibration.
Yeah.
The vibration is not always going to bring beautiful things to the surface. In order to let it go, it's got to
Mm.
bring old traumas. It's got to bring old feelings or things to be released that we're ready to let go. So, mm.
That's really interesting area, and I'm wondering where to take our chat. There's so many different areas to go into. I think that do you incorporate a kind of in your initial guidance about your sound baths? And I need to come to more of them. I'd love to come to more of them because they're close to where I live. I'd love to come along to some of them out without ones. It's an amazing venue. But do you incorporate a sort of what we're calling, or what people are calling, a kind of trauma informed kind of approach at the moment? Because sometimes in the past, I've been on, not sound gone, not things that I've been on, but when other people have been on them, and you can tell, but the person's a bit dissociated afterwards, and it was a bit too much. Like there were things coming into their psyche that they'd never experienced before. So maybe, then it was kind of like, whoa, like, and sometimes on gong baths, people can really, really like go for it. And it can be like churning people up. So what's your kind of feeling about that? Do you kind of, yeah, in terms of relating to that and who comes into the space where you're working?
Mm. That's a really, really good question. First of all, my playing style tends to be a little bit softer than most, I reckon. Um, and yeah, because I feel less is more in that.
Mm,
It's really about finding the space between the sound where a lot of the change can happen. It's not
mm.
to mean that we don't build up a lot with the gong and allow that to happen, but to allow for more space as well. It's a dynamics. It reminds me of Nirvana for some reason. Kurt Cobain used to talk
Oh my,
about.
I thought you were going straight to the ultimate conditions. It reminds me of Nirvana.
It
Oh,
just
really,
reminds me of
Ronik? You've
that time when I was
experienced the ultimate
enlightened.
enlightenment.
Yeah, I came down from there because I thought
Came back from it.
I'll be all bodhisattva now and come down and like be with you guys.
I love that. I'll put that in the thing. You know, when
No,
Ronik was reminded of Nirvana.
yeah, it reminds me of Kurt Cobain from Nirvana, talking, and like with the grunge movement, what they're really doing was doing the loud and the soft, and playing with
Mm,
the fast and the slow, and finding, allowing that to really inform things. Whereas a lot of the music was pretty much like that
mm,
at that time, and they were kind of going, no, let's really scream, and then let's go really quiet, and let's, so there's something about that which can really help our brain waves switch off, and the logical part from kind of switching off from things and just letting go. It's an important
Mm.
part. But having said that, I'm not Nirvana. Haven't attained it yet. If I do, I'll come here first and let you know. Um, but yeah, it's a really good question. So the trauma informed things, one to ones, easy for me to do. I can create and hold the space generally quite well. I think a lot of people that come to me for one to ones tend to have certain types of trauma, grief, or loss, or physical issues, but there tends to be an emotional aspect to that too. And we create that space, and it seems to be a gift that I have that I'm exploring more and wanting to, just understand more as well.
Mm.
In group sessions, in small groups, if it's just me doing the sound bath, it's fairly easy. Also, if I'm centered in my space, and I'm not always 100% centered, it might be during the sound bath, I'm feeling much more in that space, and that's okay too. It's just what it is. Um, in a larger sound bath where there's like 70, 100, however many people, of course, it's more challenging to be able to really visually see,
Yeah.
get cues from what's happening. Even if it's me and Annette, there's two of us, we're still very much concentrated on the sound and various things. So
Do you do one of the things that we often do in our, well, and we always do it really in our sound baths, is we will say to people, if at any point the experience is just too intense for you, just raise your hand a little bit so we have a sense of maybe bringing it down. We just, I mean, we found that that tends to work quite well.
yeah, I haven't thought of doing that actually. That's
We
really,
found
I mean, how do you find that? Do people raise their hands? Do they feel?
sometimes, yeah, well, I mean, some actually, my partner often raises her hands when we're doing, I mean, when I'm offering a sound thing, because she finds, especially the gong, just too intense for her sometimes.
Mm,
She's very sensitive to sound, you know, Lena, and she's very sensitive to sound. So, but sometimes people will say, I don't know, if sometimes maybe, but I think maybe I'm similar to you. I don't tend to push things. I'm a bit more like you, kind of less is more in some way.
there's a video. Sorry, it just reminded me of a video. A little bit of an off-topic thing here. Reminded me of that of a video I saw ages ago of a Siddharji um, guru gong guy jumping across a long or wide stage, I guess, with lots of gongs, just hitting the crap out of these gongs, these beautiful portals of light, sound, and energy. And it was just like, oh, I couldn't watch it for more than a few seconds before I was like covering my ears, just it was just too, and it just felt so wrong. And I heard actually that some people in some of his sessions were, having well, re-triggering basically. So when we go back to talking about trauma informed, it's like,
Mm.
well, however we do it, whether we do it intuitively and we see and we really feel it, or we see someone raising their hand, which is a brilliant thing to do. I might talk to Annette and see if it's something we might want to do.
Mm.
I mean, generally, again, our sound baths tend to be quite harmonic, but what I would say at the beginning of most of my sound baths, I try to say, is really that every experience is welcome.
Mm.
It's so important that if people feel the need to move,
Mm-hmm.
shift, that they can do so. Because there's nothing worse than feeling like you have to be stuck in this like position. If they need to leave, use the bathroom, they can do so. Just try not to kick people on their way out and stuff like
Oh, I love
that.
that. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Because people's comfort is the most important thing.
I love that because it's a big thing in a way that actually, because it can be, I mean, it could be kind of re-traumatizing if you feel that you're just, you're here and you're not allowed to move
Mm,
because you'll ruin it for everyone else. And you might be in this experience that's just, wow, it's just too much. And that's really like that. I always give people kind of permission to I think I do. I mean, yeah, to kind of move through the space or kind of um, you know, although in some, we do have though sometimes maybe a tradition that kind of it's sort of bad form or almost rude in some way to kind of leave the space. Like it's like once I'm here, I'm just supposed to stay here.
mm. Yeah, I mean, I
Interesting.
have that. I don't receive sound baths as much as I give to the pool, anywhere near as much. And I've noticed that when I do, I'm like, yeah, I'm in that space, and I'm like, oh,
Well,
it's
some teachers do approach it like that. I remember being told off for leaving yoga classes sometimes, even when I was just going to the toilet or something. It was like,
Mm.
It's like it wasn't, but different teachers can have different approaches to it in a way, but I'm a bit more open to it. So we're covered a little bit about how you're currently working, the kind of
Um,
the
I
your
have
kind of
one more thing.
yeah, go on,
Just,
yeah.
I'm just curious because, of course, all the work that you do. I mean, I try to encourage people that if they do come across anything challenging, to bring the breath into play
Mm.
and to allow that to gently inform the body to the system to see if you can let things go a little bit using that. I'm wondering if you also, you know, do that with
Um,
language
well,
styles.
often in our sound baths, one of my kind of things I do is I would guide like a yoga nidra sort of body scan relaxation first before we go into the sound, particularly if it's a longer sound bath. So people are kind of becoming more sensitive to the body and also just beginning to go into a deeper state of relaxation before the um before the sound comes. And sorry, exactly. What was your question exactly?
I guess like yeah, I mean, so that's kind of
How do you
but
go
like
in?
during, so that if people do feel that discomfort, if they don't feel comfortable raising their hand, for example, and drawing attention to themselves, perhaps, like what I'd try to say is, you can breathe. You,
Oh yeah, the through the breath. Well, yeah, I mean, sometimes with even with the longer sound baths that we do, there'll be yoga first or something, and also breath work. So people are usually in quite a good space to go into the sound relaxation. If someone was coming just straight off the street into a sound bath, then personally, I would often do some sort of breath work or maybe just some gentle yogic stretching because that's kind of what I do in a way. Because sometimes as well, if people come from like a stressful office job and then they just come into a space where they're supposed to lie down and really relax, they've just got too much
relax.
tension. They've just got too much tension in their body, and their body's calling for a bit of movement. But yeah, and just kind of yeah, it just helps us all to have a more like an awareness that can stretch throughout the body. I mean, I come from a background, my parents were very intellectual, my mum's an academic professor, and I am like quite often up in the head as much as anyone else is. But it's so useful if people can begin to be able to feel sensations in their body like throughout their body, because then you can start to have a relationship with the tension or even notice the parts that are tense. So I think it's a journey for people, but yeah, those kind of guidances about letting go through the breath, allowing the exhalation to be longer, beginning to tap into the parasympathetic nervous system, we would definitely try and bring that into our kind of
Nice.
our sound healing work.
I want to come to some of your sound baths. I love that phrase you used. Yeah, I just love the phrase of like making or having a relationship with what did you say?
With the points of tension,
The tension.
like the points of tension in the body, because I don't know if you assume, but it's easy for people like me to assume that people can feel sensation. So like if I say to myself, what's my sensation in my left finger? I know I can feel it. I feel it straight away. But for a lot of people that have never had these kind of somatic type experiences of massage or body scanner meditations, they literally don't know what you mean. If you say feel the sensation in your fingers. So it is, I think, for all of us, a kind of a journey. Well, I mean, not necessarily for all of us, but it can be more of a journey than we realize for people to become more sensitive to their body in that way. But I have a lot of tension. We all, I mean, I don't know about you, but these days, most people have a fair amount of tension in their body.
I
But
was in
it's about
Nirvana.
how we kind of relate to that and what resources we have in our life to kind of, dance and work with that.
Exactly. I was making a bad joke about being in Nirvana, so obviously I don't have any. But no, no, I'm in my I'm in my body sometimes. I'm in my head a lot of the time, and it's just allowing myself or inviting myself to spend more time in the body and literally doing the work that we do. And especially with the biofield tuning now, I'm finding is really calling me to. Well, it's not only calling me; it's giving me the opportunity to be more in my body, more in that space, and that's beautiful.
I'd love to ask you, Ronik, and this is maybe a little bit of a silly question, but it's probably a good question. If you met, say, let's say like uh, a 30-year-old young person in Bristol, and they said to you, Ronik, you're professional, you know, you're doing it as a living. What advice would you give? What advice would you give to them? What guidance would you give to them about how to approach it?
Hmm.
Difficult question because it probably, you know, it depends what the person's like, their background, but just kind of some of the main threads that you found, or maybe you know other people that have tried to get into sound healing and it hasn't worked for them, and what you've seen other people do that you maybe would kind of advise people away from doing in some way.
I mean, I'm practically that age anyway, obviously. You laughed far too quickly for my liking there, but yeah, thank you.
You look
Um,
like my age. You look like early 40s or something.
mid, let's leave it there, shall we, for now?
Sorry.
Mid 40s, yeah, just over the mids. Anyway, it's all good. I'm 46 and I'm happy with that. Yeah, hopefully this recording will stay for many,
I'm
many.
43 and I'm happy with that. I think I'm happy with that.
No, I love being this age actually, to be honest. I really do at the moment.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
interesting because in my 30s personally, I felt like a real impetus of having to succeed or do well in something, and that was a pushing thing.
Yeah,
And I was great at doing a lot of different things, but I was doing meditation and I was doing, but there was still that drive, which is there's a subtle change I found entering the 40s that's different. But then also just because of my life, you know, losing my partner the way that I did, just as given me a lot of trauma and helped me on a journey through and inside and back again and back through trauma in many different ways, which is informing my sessions. So that kind of is starting to answer hopefully your question, because if someone came to me and said I want to do this, um, there'd almost be a question of, well, okay, you know, that's great, but then, you know, basically come into your body and find out what it is you want to do and why.
yeah.
Some people might be like, I want to shake a rain stick for 10 hours at somebody, and that's going to be part of the process
Mm.
of healing. But it's like, okay, but you need to also work on yourself at the same time. It's not that it needs to be, you need to be perfect before doing it, but you need to be open to not being perfect.
Mm.
Makes sense. Um, I do a course if you want to. There are loads of different courses around. I think there's one on Udemy. Um,
There is one on Udemy. Yeah, there is. There's lots of courses,
in fact,
in
there's a guy called
person,
Tom that
online
does that.
courses.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, or you know, other people have asked me if I can help teach them, and ultimately, the thing, you know, my way of doing it is to slow down. It's to find ways to slow down where you're not like storing tension from the slowing down. I'm gonna be slow, but
Yeah,
you're releasing it. So it's a bit more of a somatic approach, but also just tuning into the instruments, tuning into your intuition, feeling into how things are, experiencing it, sharing that, tuning into what the other person's needs are, or the group or the space, what your intention is. Because my whole theory, in fact, goes for sound healing really. It still comes back to what Jonathan Goldman said some years ago, which was uh, healing equals, well, sound plus intention equals healing.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it's like that for me encapsulates this, because you can play gongs beautifully, you can play the bowls beautifully, and it'll be a beautiful musical performance. When you bring the intention into it, that's where the magic starts to happen, and that's where people feel it. It's
They
like,
do. They do feel it. I kind of almost want to say also presence plus sound equals healing in some way, because sometimes I think we can have too much of an intention in a way in the head of what we're trying to do into with the space. And I notice sometimes if I just put that aside and just be in presence in some way, that's enough. Enough. That's, you know, often sometimes enough for me in the space. And I was talking. It's no, what you said there is very wise and it's very good counsel for everyone, like, including myself and us and everyone involved with this kind of work. I was talking to my friend about this sort of topic a while back, and we had this interesting thought that we realized that when things started to go wrong in our life, socially, in situations, in groups or things, it was often when we were trying to pretend we were completely okay,
Yeah.
or and trying to mask the fact actually we're not. But if we let go of that mask and just be honest internally how we are more, then things seem to go much better, smoother in some way. You know, if we
Yeah, and
let go of that pretense of being kind of Shiva or Nirvana or whatever, like the pretense of being something that we're actually not feeling within ourselves,
yeah,
then
and
things seem to go smoother. Because I know very advanced beings, and they're teaching and doing wonderful work, like, globally all around the world. And you find out, you get to know them more, and you find out they have a lot of the same issues basically everyone else has in their life. It's like it's such a thing of not that we don't. It's not good to believe in the projection that that we might see through social media or videos, or even some guru on a stage or something like that. You know, behind closed doors, there's always
yeah.
behind the closed doors of everyone. There's always a lot more going on.
And so many things in this world now are being exposed from many years ago. So people that we maybe looked up to, or we've seen on TV, or have written books that we've admired, we suddenly find out that they have their shadow sides. And I
Really.
think it's just that. It's like I think people appreciate it more as well. At least I hope so. In my sound baths, if I'm honest about how I'm feeling,
Mm.
you know, where relevant. It's not my session to kind of like, I don't have a
I
couch.
completely,
I'm going to
yeah.
lie down and go, right, everyone. I was 4 years old, and this is what happened.
I thought this was an hour sound bath, and Ronik's been talking for half an hour about.
I do it. I lock the door, and that's it. Captive audience. Um, but yeah, I mean, sometimes there's humor that comes through, and sometimes there's not much to say.
Mm.
Generally, that's not the case for me. Um, uh, but I like what you've just said. I think it's so important to let go of some of the masks, um, or to recognize them in ourselves, not necessarily to share them with the world. But what concerns me in this time is the Instagram generation and the Instagram effect, and especially with sound therapists. I mean,
Yeah.
there are people that come to me at times in the last couple of years, and they're like, "Wow, you're really rocking it. Those pictures from that venue look incredible." And I'm like, "You must be doing really well." And it's been like, "Oh, well, actually, I've had a really bad month, and not many people have signed up." And I'm like, "But thank you for thinking that." But it doesn't. That's not actually what I'm trying to do. I'd rather be honest and real about how things are. But there is this temptation, I think, for people to have a sense of perfection, as you're saying.
Yeah, yeah,
I've seen that and the filters are just right, and all that stuff is right. But to be honest, for me, I don't put that much effort into social media. I I have photos that people have taken at different events, and I might take a few because it feels special. But if there's one session where I've had 5 people, and then another session where I've had 20, sometimes it's the one with 5 that, even though it's not financially amazing for me, that's the one that's really touched my heart and I'll be grateful for. And I think, yeah, I don't think there was a question that you were asking me there, but
no, but I think you're saying, yeah, you're going in the direction of what I want to say now. Is just the thing of what I've really noticed recently within my own work is if I compromise too much on my own internal values, things slowly, not necessarily overnight, but things slowly start to go a bit downhill in terms of my energy and my creativity. So I think part of maybe what you're touching upon is, keeping it real for you, and yeah, being a bit wary of the kind of, I don't know how you would call it, like a kind of manufactured sort of celebrity sound healer
yeah, yeah.
visage, whatever that looks like in some
I mean,
sort
look, I have the hair.
of.
Finally, my complexion is working for me, whereas for 10, 15 years, taking an aeroplane was like, oh my God, I'm in a different queue and I'm going to be singled out. So why not use it? And I have a white shirt. I mean, what more do you need? You know, but it's about embodying it in a
Yeah,
degree. Not, just because I wear the Ohm t-shirt doesn't mean I'm a holy man. It's just
Oh no, 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 it
Love,
doesn't.
I love this. I love feeling it. I like to embody it, but not that it defines who I am,
Yeah, yeah.
but more that I can step into my power in a sense. And I think that's really important. Not power over someone, but my own personal space.
Did you realize these things when you were younger? Because I went, I think we all go
Obviously.
through phases where we forget the stuff that we're talking about.
No, no. I mean, no. I mean, I went back and forth. I thought I was really quite clued up in my 20s and 30s, but my partner reminded me quite often how arrogant I was really being, which was a good leveler. Um,
Longer term relationships, very good leveler for everyone.
mm,
Very good leveler for everyone.
yeah, completely right. And it's yeah, I think coming back to being real because there have been some profound experiences. I'm sure you've had them too, and you're like, wow, that was incredible. And then I'll find myself making a really bad dad joke or something at the end of a sound bath, and it's like people, there's a chuckle, there's a laugh, there's letting go of that seriousness of things and allowing a bit more playfulness, a bit more lightness, a bit more, just not taking ourselves too seriously, I guess, is really important too.
Well, we've chatted for about an hour now, so this is probably a good length of time. And yeah, I'd love just to maybe we could arrange a time for me to pop round for a cup of tea or something, and
Sounds good.
for me to have a look at your beautiful white robes, and I don't know.
They shimmer so much, you might need
They
sunglasses.
shim. Actually, when I teach Kundalini, no, I shouldn't say this publicly, but yeah, I wear white, and this is sort of thing we're supposed to do. But yeah, I'm very much of the view that yeah, these things they're just a secondary factor.
Mm.
So thank you so much, Ronik. I'd love to chat to you more if there's opportunities in ways like this. And how can people? We'll put it on the description of the video. But if people want to reach out to you or find out more about your work, how can they do that?
So my website is Rounik.com, which is Rounik.com. It wasn't spelled phonetically. What can you do? But yeah, I'm on social media, Facebook. I guess I should have probably mentioned as well. I also sell Tibetan bowls now,
Oh wow.
which come from the same shamanic Nepalese family that made the bowls that I bought 4 years ago or so, which is amazing to do. In fact, I just sold a set before before I jumped on this call, which is just incredible. So I get them in from a really beautiful place.
I actually might be in the market for. I was thinking about getting a bigger one, but I might have to save up for that, or maybe it could be a Christmas present from someone for me. But thank you so much, Ron. It was really a pleasure to
Thank
have
you, Tom. I
you,
really appreciate it. Thanks.
to have you with us.